Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our webinar this evening on launching your college search during COVID-19. For those of you who are new to MIFA, we are the not-for-profit state authority created in 1982. Really, our mission is to help families plan, save, and pay for college. And we do this through a variety of ways. On the savings side, we are the state sponsor of 2 savings programs. We also have a low-cost educational loan available for students and families that need to research that or take advantage of that route. And then a lot of our focus is on providing guidance to students and families as they navigate this college process. And so, tonight's panel, we're excited to have some admissions experts talk to you about what to expect and what's new, what's the same in the admissions process. And so if this is your first webinar with us, we encourage you to check out other recordings that we have of previous webinars. And then also to go to our website and register for any upcoming webinars that we have. We have one on scholarships. We have another one on what to know about student loans next week. And so a lot of really good content for you. So definitely check out mifa.org and register for our email communications as well. My name is Jonathan Sperling. I've been with MIFA for almost 2 years now. I've spent my entire career in the college financing and education space. And so excited to be your moderator tonight as we go through this panel presentation. So before I do introduce our panel members and jump into the questions, just a little bit about participating in this webinar. Everyone is in as an attendee on mute. And so, we'll keep you muted throughout the presentation, just makes for a cleaner presentation. If you do have questions throughout, feel free to send them along in the questions section. My colleague, Julie Shields-Rutina, will be monitoring that question panel or section, and she'll be able to answer any specific questions that you have about your situation. We do have a full slate of questions, and a lot of those were built and put together based on when folks registered. We asked you to share some questions that you might have for the panel, and so we were able to work a lot of those in, and so thank you for sending those along. But if we do have some time at the end, we will take some additional audience questions and throw them out to the panel to get their thoughts. We don't have a download for tonight's presentation simply because a lot of this will be the panel. And we will record tonight's session. So sometime tomorrow we'll have available for playback. So, don't worry about taking notes tonight. We'll send that out to you later tomorrow. So I am very happy to introduce our panel of experts who are here with us tonight at the end of a long day of many meetings to provide some thoughts and really answer questions that you have about launching your college search during COVID-19. So first we have Andrew Palumbo. Andy is the Assistant Vice President for Enrollment Management and Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid at Worcester Polytechnic Institute. So welcome, Andy. Jennifer Walker. Jen is the Dean of Admission and Financial Aid at Brandeis University. And thanks for joining us, Jen. Emily Roper-Doughton. Did I get it right? Yep. Emily is the Dean of Admission and Financial Aid at Olin College. And last but certainly not least is Ryan Forsyth. Ryan is the Vice President for Enrollment Management at Worcester State University. So Ryan, Emily, Jen, Andy, thank you all for joining us this evening. So I'd like to start with a question for the whole group. Just, given all that has transpired over the past few months with COVID-19, we know that many colleges are working remotely and will continue to be remote for some time. So if each of you could just speak a little bit about, where your campus is right now. Are you remote? We know that you're all open, but are you remote? And as it relates to, traditional visits for the summer, Are you open for in-person visits or, virtual opportunities? And what are ways that students and families can connect with you? So, Andy, maybe we can start with you.
Sure. Thanks for having me, and good evening, everyone. Before I jump into answering that, just thanks for joining the webinar. And also, I just want to share, I think I can speak for everyone on the panel here. My heart goes out to you, rising juniors, rising seniors, parents, trying to navigate the college search process is stressful enough. Trying to do so in a global pandemic is less than ideal. So hopefully this is helpful for you tonight. And yeah, I think transitioning into the question, obviously we were all a bit surprised by what occurred a few months ago. And so I think one of the positives that you all should take away is how well higher ed as an industry scrambled to support our students. I think that was number one for all of us, was how do we continue providing the high quality education that we provide to students in a remote format as a pandemic was hitting. And so I think, that's a real success story for WPI and across higher ed and how we responded. So now we're in this new normal. So, the college fairs, the high school visits, college folks coming to your high schools, you coming to our campuses, all of those things that you expected to be doing are not happening right now, or are not happening how they normally would happen. And so the first thing I want to say is it's going to be okay. All of us here are scrambling, spending long hours, doing really thoughtful, careful planning about how to best support all of you in the search process. And I think a silver lining is that you're going to see some pretty unique opportunities that you wouldn't normally get to see at all of our universities. And I think it'll probably be a little bit different for each of us, but definitely we are probably taking a more thoughtful approach this year than in a typical year, because we really have to think through everything we're doing. And so, for WPI, I think a lot of us are probably doing similar things. For WPI, we've had a virtual tour on our website. And so that is definitely a very popular option right now for students to get a feel for the campus, get some information. We have some online information sessions where we give you an overview of WPI. We also have online interview opportunities for students. And then we have built up some academic programming, so some special opportunities to engage with faculty members and students within academic disciplines. And those are sort of scheduled for certain times, and we'll send that information out to students who have contacted us or we have contact with. And then on top of that, we're doing really thoughtful planning about when to come back to campus and what those campus visits look like. And so I think it's safe to say they're not going to be the normal tour, but you are going to get a tour. We're going to be finding ways to do this safely and in ways that are of value to you in your process. So you can expect masks, you can expect social distancing, you can expect smaller groups. And really, I think that's, it's really a matter of when we'll do this and what the specifics will be. But we're expecting to make some of those decisions in the coming weeks. So it's possible we could have students visiting on campus this summer, but obviously we'll be following all the public health and state and local guidance. But yeah, I think that there's a very high likelihood you will have the opportunity to visit WPI and other schools this year.
Great, thank you. Any
others
want
to Andrew's thoughts that there are going to, as Andrew said, there are going to be a lot of opportunities for you to experience campuses in a way that may be the same as you've seen siblings or parents or cousins or neighbors do in previous years. But there's also going to be opportunities this year for new and exciting ways to experience campuses. So for instance, right now, we know that a couple of campuses nearby, right here in Massachusetts, have put together drive-through tours. So you have your online tour. This is often referred to as a virtual tour. This can be anything from pictures to movies to an interactive experience where you use your computer to go onto a campus map and move your way around a college campus. You also have the on-campus tours, which just like Andrew said, there are a number of campuses that are working to bring those back to our campuses this summer in a safe way. But there are also these new ways, and one way is the drive-through tour. If you are close to your college campus, if you're within driving distance, the campus may have established a way for you to visit campus, not just by driving through, which of course has always been your option, but this is more of a guided experience. Maybe you play a YouTube video in your car, or tune into a radio station, the local radio station, to get information about the campus while you're there. That gives you the ability to be on campus, be safe, be distant, but also have that in-person experience. Some students do very well with virtual tours. Some students get a lot out of them. You can see the campus, you can feel it if you're comfortable doing that. But others of us, myself possibly included, need to be there, need to touch it, need to feel it. And until we have the ability to have students back on our college campuses in an in-person way, the drive-through, either guided tour or the drive-through on your own tour, may be a good option for you to consider.
So I want to just echo Andy's sentiments here about it's all going to be okay, and I think I'll give some advice at the end of this. But for the families with us, I do think I probably speak for all of my colleagues and many in the profession who aren't here when I say that, we all want to work with you, and we want to make this a process that is helpful and useful and transparent. And that is hard in sort of a normal everyday world. And we recognize the challenges that we're all in right now. So beyond that, I would add, and I'm not sure if other folks had said this. So Brandeis, we're currently scaling up our operations, right? We never officially shut down, but sent many folks off campus. So scaling up operations, bringing researchers back to campus in a way that complies with the government and, and the Mass State rules right now. And we'll be shortly making an announcement in the next couple of weeks about what the fall will look like for our returning and first year students. And at the same time, we in admissions are doing a lot of virtual events. And what I think we are able to provide at Brandeis that we've never done in quite the same way, that I do think is a benefit to students coming in, is giving access to our current students in one-on-one and small group ways that just weren't always possible when everyone was in class or scattered around, or we had just a small group of students with us in the summer. So we have a lot of students who work with our office and for our office who are very interested in meeting you all and helping prospective students understand and know more about Brandeis. And while I know that being on a campus is always, for me, I'm also an in-person learner, that would feel really helpful. Some of you may intend to look at colleges that are clear across the country, and you wouldn't have flown there anyway. And so now you're having these really robust virtual opportunities that wouldn't have otherwise existed if schools didn't have to think about doing them for you. So I would say that as you're going into your search process and using the internet to research, as you probably always would, to dig deep into what is available virtually, because some colleges have just gotten really creative with what they're able to offer. And you're going to find, I think, to some degree, more information, easier to find, and the ability to interact with humans online in a way that was never present before.
I think everybody has made really good points, and I just want to underscore that in like anything, when it comes to the sort of the college search and admission process, you need to make this yours. And even though this year might not feel like other years, there's a lot of opportunities out there. And so if you take this moment to be reflective and think about who you are and what you want, and then match that to different colleges that are providing all these different opportunities, there's gonna be a rewarding experience in there, even if it's not the one that you expected. And I think everyone has made a nod to a lot of us are getting really creative, and part of that is because we want to engage with you. We want to meet you. We want you to meet our students and our faculty. And so, I think, at Olin, we are closed and we will remain closed to visitors throughout the rest of the summer, but we have tried to almost make choose your own adventure options online available to students. So for that student who wants to sit through, the more hour-long, live information session, it's there. If somebody wants to sit through a half an hour of a live and then go meet with a student, we can do that. If you want to do an interview, you can do that. If you want to do a recorded session, you can do that, because everybody's at a different place. And people even within a family are in different places, right? So a student might not want to sit for an hour with their parent through a webinar about an institution, but you can both pick the options that are right for you. So you're going to be able to make this your own, and there's lots of really creative things happening in offices across the country to help you get to know our campuses in the best way we can at this time while keeping folks safe.
I think that's excellent advice from everyone. And, just as so much is happening, so many great things and great opportunities for folks to connect with colleges, and, some really great takeaways about the new and innovative ways that colleges are approaching this, and making sure that students and families have the opportunity to continue to connect with you and do it in some great and really unique ways. So I think that's that's certainly a positive that we can take away. So certainly the pandemic obviously impacted all of us in many different ways, and we know that many students will want to speak about this in their college application, and so from an overall to the college applications, what are you hearing about those various forms, the Common App, the Coalition app, and are they making any enhancements or changes to those forms as a result of COVID-19?
Yes, they are. And I think this is another one of those ways that higher ed is responding super well to how do we help you through this process? How do we connect? So the Common Application is actually providing a free write question for students that's similar to the additional information section of the website. So if you have if there's a disruption in your life that you want to be able to note in your application, you have a dedicated space that you're able to do that. So you don't have to feel like my story, my entire personal statement or something in a writing supplement has to be about something COVID specific. You have a spot to say, this was disrupted, I couldn't do that, in ways that allow you to acknowledge the disruption that you experienced. Similarly, on the Common Application, your recommenders in the secondary school report is going to have an option for your school counselor to say how the grading might have switched, what happened with how classes were being evaluated in student progress. And the Coalition application has done the same thing. They've chosen a different format where the student actually has a sort of a checklist where you could say, these different things were disrupted in my life. So you don't necessarily have to write actually any sort of longer content, but there is an option. I want to say, I want to provide additional information, and there's a short free write available to you. They're also providing something very similar for college counselors to say, we went past fail, we went past no record, what are the different ways that those disruptions took place on that campus, so that you can preserve the places like your essays to sort of tell the story you want to tell about yourself, your experience, your hopes, your dreams, what do you want to do sort of in the world, rather than spending that time on those COVID disruptions. So we're going to have a lot of really good information in those places to be able to say, what happened, how was your life impacted? And it's possible that something happened during this time that it was so life-changing for you, maybe it's changed your direction, that maybe you do want to talk about it in your essay, but there's places for that. So you don't have to feel like that's where that's going to be. And a number of schools, I've seen a few that are not Coalition or Common Application schools that have individualized applications, they're making those spaces available to students as well. We want to make sure you have that chance.
That's excellent. Yeah, and I know that one of the questions we consistently are hearing now more often is, is there that opportunity to talk a little bit about the impact? And I know that that's certainly on students and families' minds. So yeah, it's great that there's going to be that opportunity, there's going to be that chance to kind of talk a little bit about, and not only for the students and families, but also for those counselors as well. So that's great. Another question that we have gotten a lot. And, as I mentioned, when we were preparing for this webinar, as folks registered, we asked them to submit questions. And we've also gotten these as folks are calling us and reading a lot in the news and about, it relates to standardized test scores and, SAT, ACT scores. And so, I was just hoping that each of you could kind of speak a little bit about how your college considers standardized test scores and as part of the admissions process, and will things stay the same? Will they change for the class of 20, the rising seniors going to be entering fall 2021, or will they stay the same? So how does your college consider those standardized test scores?
Well, MIFA must have planned the timing of this webinar around Harvard's decision.
I wasn't going to say it, but I did see that this morning. Yes.
So if you have not heard yet, one of the most elite institutions in the country, Harvard University, has announced, I believe it was Monday, that they have discontinued use of standardized tests for admission for the class that will be entering in fall of 21. So if that doesn't send a signal as to where standardized tests are relative to higher education, I don't know what will. But I can tell you that there has been a movement nationwide for a number of years regarding changes to standardized tests, both the SAT from the College Board as well as the ACT, to make those tests more accessible to multiple populations and make them more useful for students and colleges in the college search and college selection processes. So the tests have changed pretty dramatically in the last few years, and that means that students are testing differently, scoring in some cases is different, and colleges are using them in different ways. But there are some examples, and Harvard is the most recent, most dramatic one, of where campuses are moving away from standardized tests. Some do believe that these tests are biased against some underrepresented populations of college students and high school students. There is also a belief on some college campuses that they are not useful in the things that we often used them for, and that was the predicting of the likelihood for college success. As an example, the university that I work at, Worcester State University, has made all academic programs test optional. So a student is welcome to submit their standardized test scores, SAT or ACT, if they believe that that's helpful to them. But for a student that believes that that test is not representative of their ability or otherwise is not a good reflection of their ability that they expect to have when they get to college, any student that applies to Worcester State University is welcome to not submit SAT or ACT scores. Students are considered for selective academic programs without SAT scores. Students are considered for scholarships without SAT scores. Students can enter into our honors program without SAT scores. And there's not only has this phenomena of change relative to standardized tests been happening for a number of years, but really COVID-19 and the cancellation of tests and the inability for students to take the test has really influenced this movement even more dramatically. So more campuses are starting to reconsider whether or not the standardized test is an appropriate item for them to collect from students in order to consider them for admission. What you should do as a young person considering your options, if you do decide on a college or a university, you want to be sure that you understand what that college or university's expectations for standardized tests are. Up north, we like the SAT quite a bit. Down south, if you're considering institutions in another part of the country, the ACT is a more popular exam. But for those campuses that still require standardized tests, usually they'll take either one. What that requires, though, is for you as a student and you as a family to be very aware of what that college is looking for. If your college is interested in standardized tests, of course, it's an important part of that admission process. You want to make sure to provide them. But you're likely to find more and more campuses doing away with them.
Yeah, I'll jump in to sort of echo what Ryan said. and great thorough answer on testing. I probably will be a little less diplomatic in my response. For years, I mean, really since test scores have been inserted into the admissions process, there has been a problematic correlation with a test taker's family income, with their sex, and with their race and ethnicity. And so what you've seen, what Ryan's described, there's been an acceleration of schools that have adopted test optional admissions policies. Over the past 20 years, it just continues to tick up. We were well over 1,050 before COVID hit. And then you saw probably another 200 plus schools begin to quickly change policies, whether it's adopting a 3-year pilot, whether it's taking a 1-year approach, suspending. I think the important thing for everyone here to know is a lot of students aren't going to be able to get the test. So I mean, it's crazy for any school that thinks that they're going to be able to hold on to this requirement that, to be perfectly honest, no one in admissions needs to make a good decision. We just don't need it. It's something some schools may want, but we have really smart, thoughtful, well-trained people in our admissions teams who can make excellent decisions that are grounded in students' academic preparation and their fitness for our universities. That's what we do. We don't need a test score to do it. And I think one of the more intriguing things that's come out of this explosion of test optional schools over the past several years has been sort of the second frontier of test optional, which is looking at the use of test scores in merit aid. So WPI 2 years ago, we spent several years working toward this, but we eliminated any use of test scores in our merit scholarships because we didn't want to reinforce the type of things that were concerning when we went test optional for admissions. And we're starting to see more and more schools do that. And so testing, I would say to folks who are listening here, I'd be less worried about trying to scramble to get a test in which you have to wear a face mask for 4 hours in a room with people socially distanced. There's so many better uses of your time or of your students' time and safer things they could be doing. So I would really say if you've already taken it, great. You can send it in if you want to. I would not be worrying about this aspect of the process. I would focus that energy somewhere else because we're now at almost 1,300 test optional schools. There's like a dozen going every day. It's really just paperwork at this point. Schools just getting through the process to officially announce that they're not going to require test scores because, quite frankly, a lot of students won't have them. So I would just say if you take anything away from the standardized testing answers here, that is not the thing for you or your student to worry about.
Can I just add one nitty-gritty piece, which is if you're you can find the answer on any college or university website as to whether they're test optional, whether it's a pilot, whether it's new. But the website fairtest.org is a nice resource if you want to just see them all listed out, and they're trying like crazy to keep it up to date. As you heard Andy mention, there's many every day. I think it's updated as of June 10th right now, but it provides a nice list if you're just looking for something easily accessible, I think.
That's great. Yeah. So I think, good takeaways. Website again, fairtest.org.
Fairtest.org. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely checking the college's website as well to see kind of, what their stance is. One question that we did have as folks were commenting, we had an attendee said their son took their AP test online, and they were asking about our all standardized tests moving that way. And so I'm not sure if you folks have it. Nope, we're saying no, they're not moving that way.
Yeah, they're definitely not. They were planning on rolling out the SAT online, and many of us were very vocal coming out against that. And thankfully, the College Board did listen, and they've canceled it. The ACT has claimed that they're going to try some sort of online version. I can't stress this enough. It's not the thing to worry about this year.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't worry about it.
Absolutely. No, that's good advice. You know, I think it's with the litany of other things that folks have to be concerned about. You know, I think that's certainly good for our families to hear. So another question that we've been hearing, and we didn't plan this around the Harvard announcement, Ryan, although sometimes we get lucky. So, but another question we've been hearing from folks, and you know, we're trying to understand right now, is it a kind of an individual campus versus kind of a larger trend, is that you know, we've heard from some graduating seniors who were planning to start in fall of 2020, considering a gap year, and schools are offering a deferment until fall of 2021. And so for our students who are rising seniors, some questions that we're getting is, okay, if there's a large group that's now going to defer, that was supposed to start in fall of 2020, they're going to start in fall of 2021. Does that impact my admissibility and things of that nature? So too early to tell, or how do folks, any thoughts on the deferment and potential long-term impact?
Yeah, so first let me say, you know, I did think that the college search process is complicated enough that we don't have to create more things to worry about, generally speaking, would be my feeling on it.
Sure.
Nonetheless, let me address the question. It is a fair question. There are a lot of schools, so colleges and universities all allow deferment and generally allow students to take 1 year off from their start date. This is a normal practice, and every school has a handful to, you know, some large percentage of their class or significant percentage doing that. And frankly, gap years and time away before you start college can be really useful and really productive and a great time to grow. So there's many schools that have even shifted to trying to encourage students to do it. And that happened long before there was a pandemic, just a belief that it's useful for students. So may we see more students opting to defer this year? Possibly. I would also add that there are schools like Brandeis, for instance, I'm not sure about my colleagues on the panel right now, who we've made adjustment to our policy, which usually says you have to take a full year. And we're going to allow students, if they really don't want to start in the fall term, they're immunocompromised and we're going to be on campus, or for whatever reason they don't want to be online, they have other productive and useful things they could do, we will allow them to start in January. So, you know, when Brandeis makes its announcement, we'll see what families choose to do. But I would also mention, you know, we're a sample size of 4, and there's thousands and thousands of colleges across the country, and they will all open in different ways and with different capacities. And some schools might be allowing, you know, for a winter term. Some schools have already announced they're going to be adding on a summer term, so that if students start in January, they would go through the summer. So there's going to be a lot of systems out there. There absolutely might be places where they have a big deferral class and possibly it limits selectivity. These are a very small percentage of schools, right? There's so many schools across the country with tremendous capacity and a tremendous ability to accept students into their class. And, you know, so it just brings me back around to my original point. Like, so much of that is inside baseball. And I simply don't think that we need to just dig up more things to be worried about. Let's try to focus on finding the school that, to the best we can figure, is a really good fit for us, and then presenting a really nice, genuine package of who we are when we apply. That's probably where I put my focus.
Yeah, and I totally agree with what Jen has shared. I think really you're looking at 2 groups of students who are considering gap years for very different reasons. And this is any year. It could be impacted larger by the pandemic, but really you have the small tier of really affluent students who the New York Times write about, Washington Post writes about, Wall Street Journal writes about the gap year experience and they go off to Greece and, you know, they build a house and they hang out on the beach. That's not the typical experience for most students. And also, we're probably going to see less of that this year because you're not flying to Greece. There's not a whole lot you can do. But then the other gap year, I think, is a much more common gap year, and that's for students who may have family responsibilities or who may have been impacted financially, who are unable to afford college right now. And I think that those are really the students I think we're all concerned about and trying to create flexible pathways for these students. Not that we don't in normal years, but we realize that there's a higher likelihood that more students are grappling with this. And so, as Jen mentioned, I think a lot of us are doing what Brandeis has done, and it's creating more options for students to, you know, maybe just take that first semester or maybe take that that first year. But I think you'll also see flexible modes of delivery, a lot of hybrid models for students who may be immunocompromised, who may be concerned about returning to campus. I think you're doing a whole range of things. I don't think it's going to impact your class because, you know, one of the truths that we all know is that before the coronavirus, one of the biggest issues higher ed was facing is a decrease in traditional age college students. And so every year, more and more schools are not able to bring in the class that they want to bring in. And so I think that in a lot of the higher ed stories, specifically about admissions, in media, they tend to be focused on a small select group of schools like your Harvards, who, you know, are operating a very different model than the rest of higher education. And so I think there's not so much to be concerned about. And like Jen said, you know, we're in the middle of a pandemic still. We have plenty of things we can be worried about. So this wouldn't be one that would rise too high on my list.
Can I add one tiny little thing? And is that the pandemic is expensive, right? So the things that we've had to do as institutions to keep our communities safe, to get our students home, to make sure that we're refunding them for, you know, room and board when they're not on campus, they cost money for institutions. And so a large group of deferred students out of one class, if you can't make them all up necessarily from, you know, from waitlist or from other alternatives, there are probably places that are considering, even if they have a big group of deferred students next year, of increasing that class size to be able to really think about how, as an institution, are they able to, over the course of several years, absorb some of the expenses of prioritizing your community's health. And so, so I do think, you know, I like this idea of let's not create more things to worry about, but it makes a good story, doesn't it? So don't get the clickbait, right? Like there's a lot of ways in which this can work out, you know, for you. And some of the things have nothing to do with you. It's about colleges making choices about maybe expanding enrollment for a couple of years to refill those classrooms, those dorms, and those experiences. So I have hope for you.
No, I think that's great to hear. And, you know, I do like the theme as well, kind of, you know, things to we have enough to worry about. There's enough to go through, and we know the admissions process can be overwhelming. So I think it's good to hear, but you're right. You know, this is a lot of what the media is talking about. This is a lot. There's a lot of articles about higher education. Certainly we all read them, but I think that a lot of folks are reading them. And so it's good to hear, you know, kind of some school perspectives and you know, what thinking about on individual campuses, but more of an industry trend as well. So speaking of thousands and thousands of colleges, and kind of switching gears a little bit, let's talk about general college search, because we know that there are lots and lots of options when it comes to a higher education. And, you know, on this webinar, and we have families that are at different stages in their college search. Some are just beginning, some are a little bit more advanced, and options can be great, but they can also sometimes be overwhelming. And so, you know, what's your advice for students and families who are maybe just starting out with their college search? You know, how do you sift through all of the options? Where's a good place to start? How do I begin?
I'll start. Sure that
I know it's a loaded question.
there's 4,000 colleges to choose from. You know, that's no problem. This is the part that scares family at the beginning, right? When you're a family considering higher education, especially for a first child, but even for that second or third child, you've got a lot of concerns ahead of you about how you go through the process of making sure that you or your son or daughter makes it to that place that is right for them, right? So this is scary. And aside from affording college, it might be the most scary thing about the higher education search process is how do I find that place that's going to be perfect for me out of the thousands of colleges in country and even colleges in other countries that I can consider. Well, part of that is a pretty lengthy process of just understanding what is out there and helping match that to the things that might be right for you. One of the pieces of advice that I'll give you is to just take a deep breath. There's a lot of information out there for you. You don't have to make a decision before your senior year. You don't have to make a decision at the beginning of your senior year. You will see friends or classmates around you saying, I've decided I'm going to UCLA or I'm going to West Virginia. And that's great because students are going to make those decisions and they're going to find that right home, that right place over a period of time. And so if you don't find that place until November or December or January or February of your senior year, that is okay. But there is a process that you'll go through to help find that place that's right for you. You'll investigate colleges. A lot of students get their first information from the internet. That's okay. It's okay to go on to college websites, hop on your phone when you have some free time, hop on the tablet and just kind of poke through what's available online. If you don't have great internet access or you don't like to learn about colleges through online, I promise every college on this panel and every other college will send you a brochure if you just ask us. They will all look marvelous. Every campus has a pond. Every campus has foliage 12 months a year because we're going to put our best foot forward for you, right? We're going to show you that we really want you at our college or our university. But your job is to absorb that information and help really determine what might be best for you. You might narrow that list based on academic program. You might decide on which college or university based on whether or not you want to live there. You might make your decision based on affordability. MIFA is great for hosting seminars all over the state relative to admissions. Well, we can't do it now because there's a worldwide pandemic, but we host events all around the state to talk about admissions, to talk about affordability of college. And one of the messages when we talk about affordability is that for that you're going to have a spectrum of affordable colleges. You're going to have a low-cost institution, medium cost, and high-cost institution. And as you're in your junior year or the beginning of your senior year, the advice that I think most of us would give you is that you don't want to exclude a campus from your list simply because of what the price might be. There's merit scholarship that I believe one of the panelists mentioned a moment ago. There's financial assistance that can help make almost any higher education affordable for students. And so one of those factors might be cost. One of those factors might be academic program, might be proximity to home, might be their safety information, might be where they're located, but you'll go through that process of narrowing down and coming up with that perfect place. And what I tell every family, and I'm sure if you haven't heard this before, I hope that that today you remember this, and that is that college that you decide to go to this fall or next fall or 2 falls from now, that college that you decide to go to is the right one when you say it's the right one. It's the one that feels right. It's the one that you feel comfortable at. COVID-19 has disrupted a number of things. We talked earlier about campus visits. Visiting campus is sometimes a really important piece of that decision-making process for some students. Some students don't have to visit the campuses, but many do. And sometimes when you step onto that campus, that's what helps you make that feeling connection. It helps you understand if this is the place where you know you're going to be successful. We know that students do transfer from campus to campus. And if that's part of your future, that's okay as well. But we really hope that you find that campus that you're going to be successful on and you get to stay on that campus all the way through graduation. And this process is a deliberative process that you'll go through over the course of a number of months. But remember to take a deep breath, you'll make it.
Can I jump in here real quick?
Absolutely.
Or maybe not so quick. So I agree with breathing. I take a little bit of a different angle, and I might challenge families to think about the notion that possibly there isn't a perfect place. I really like the idea that you're going to college and you're going to get an education. And so from where I sit, I'm not sure that there's a bad, like, is education bad? Can it ever be bad? If we start in a place, if families start in a place where we're going to go to college and we are going to get an education and breathe, and it's going to be all right, as they start to narrow down those other factors Ryan talked about, you actually may end up with a handful, a dozen, who knows how many places that when you say this is the place are going to be tremendous. You know, colleges across the country are working to support their students, to try to help them graduate, to try to help them make it affordable. Some do that better than others, and there's a lot of resources to figure out who is who. But I really like the notion that you're not on a scavenger hunt for one perfect thing. I think it frees up some space for the possibility of a few more options.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's for many folks, and if they're early on, kind of having and knowing that there's some factors to look at, there's some things to look at, and I think it's also nice to kind of call out that every institution is obviously putting their best foot forward and on that recruitment process, and I think we all know that intuitively, but when you start to see that and start to kind of see that from colleges and you get in the thick of it, we strongly encourage folks, at MIFA we focus a lot on the financial aspect of it, and so we try to encourage folks to take the emotion out of it and just think a little bit more about some of those hard factors. But colleges are very good. All of you are very good at recruiting students, so I think that's some great advice. Let's kind of a grab bag of questions here that have come through and kind of jumping around a little bit. But let's talk a little bit about essays. This was another question when folks registered, we had them submit questions, and so among other parts of the admissions application, we know that the essay is an opportunity for students to share about themselves, and there's obviously some prompts, and I know that all of you have read many essays in your careers, some good, some bad, some ugly, some fantastic. So, what sticks out? What's a good essay? What are some good tips that you can give to students as they're approaching what we think is a critical component of the process?
Sure. I'll take this one. So it's good timing because rising seniors, you all should have your first draft of your essay done by about June 20th. So it's the 16th. Now, I'm kidding. Sorry.
I was like, really? Breathe. I was going to write that down. I was going to write really? Oh, wow.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. So I'm here for the levity, folks. So the essay, I think, I share that because I think there's a lot of anxiety about this, right? Because it's really open-ended, and for some students, that's awesome. They love it. They're creative. They're excited. It's an opportunity to stand out. If you're like I was a million years ago, you're like, what am I going to write about? There's 650 words I can use. Where do I start? Like trying to fit 17 years into 650 words is not going to work, right? So you have to have a strategy. So the best advice I can give is realize that there are human beings on the other end reading this. So, no one is taking out the red pen and trying to, cut apart what it is you think is important. It's an opportunity for you to shine, to share us a little bit about who you are that might not come out in you know, your transcript, the courses you've taken, even, you know, guidance, a school council recommendation or a teacher recommendation. It's really your opportunity to tell us something, 1 to 2 things that you think are important for us to know. And so I think the best essays are ones that really focus and just try to let us know one thing. It's not the only thing that makes a student unique or distinctive, but one thing that we should know about them or that might be interesting. And so, you know, I go back to the best essay I ever read was about a lunchroom dare. So there's this gentleman who was finishing his lunch. There's 5 minutes left in lunch. And his friend comes up and he says, "Hey, you're gonna eat your apple?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna eat my apple." He's like, "I bet you couldn't eat that apple in 4 bites." And so then second paragraph, he jumps in, sort of internal monologue, and he's like, "All right, 4 bites. I can do this. I can do this. We got 5 minutes left." So he stops. He rotates the apple around. He talks about taking a thoughtful approach to how he's going to take that first bite, because the first bite really sets you up for success or failure. And so he starts loosening his muscles. He takes the biggest bite he can take, and there's still a huge chunk of this apple, maybe more than 75% left. And so he's getting a little nervous, but he's like, "No, I got this. I got this." Takes a second bite, and then more than half the apple's gone. And so he's on pace. He's feeling good. He's feeling good. And as everyone's starting to crowd around from other lunch tables, the bell rings, everyone's paying attention, and he takes the apple and fits the entire rest of the apple into his mouth. And he talks about how it's painful. There's like a tear coming out of the corner of his eye as he tries to grind this apple. It's so big he can't use his teeth. He's using the roof of his mouth and he's trying to crush this apple. And so he talks about how he finally did it. And everyone cheered, right? He's the hero of the day. And so I share that example because who on earth would write that essay, right? Like, but it was a great essay because he summed it up by telling us a little bit about himself. He's someone who has a sense of humor, obviously. He's someone who likes to set goals for himself. He's thoughtful about how he approaches goals, but he's also competitive, and he likes to exceed the goals that he sets or that are set for him. And so it's a really humorous way, you know, someone taking a creative writing style to tell a story. And it's not the 5-paragraph essay that you learn in English class. So I think that I just give that example because I think it's important for you to know that there's a broad range of ways that you can write about yourself. Styles, poetry is common, you know, but it's important you're just trying to tell us something about yourself. And, you know, if you are a humorous person, don't be afraid to be funny. If you're not sure if you're a humorous person, you're probably not funny, so don't try. But you know, that's my piece of advice.
Oh, love it. Love the story, by the way. And I think that would go with any piece of fruit, right? If it was a different piece of fruit, that would have been okay too. Only thing I will add, great information from Andrew. Only thing I would add is follow what the college is looking for. So if the college is looking for 650 words, you're looking at 650 words. First thing to sync an essay is a 650 word essay that has 15,000 words. So follow those prompts. If there is a prompt, use the prompt. Don't go off on your own. That college is asking for that information and setting parameters on your essay for a reason. And so just go ahead and follow it. And then, of course, follow all the great advice that Andrew just gave.
Two tiny little things.
Yeah,
because I love essays. I love talking about them. I love reading them. I think it's part of the reason why I got hooked into this job, because I feel like it's like a collection of short stories. Like that's reading season. Like that's when I totally like nerd out on the essays. And one of the things that I think is important to keep in mind is we want to read an essay that you want to write. So if you like what you're writing about, you're going to write a better essay that's going to communicate something interesting about you. Andy's example is a good one, right? Like that student liked writing that essay. And they didn't necessarily write the essay that someone said, you should write about this. And so that when you write about something that you like, or you want to tell, it's a better essay because you're in it, you're excited about it. And we're going to be able to get those bits of your personality sort of coming through it. So you want to be able to, you don't want to just sort of say, oh, I'm going to write about this, or, oh, I should write about that. Like, think about it. Like, what do you want someone to know about you? What's a story that helps us get to know you? So that's one piece of advice. And then the other is, if you're applying to schools that have like a common application personal statement and their own essays, right? So like a writing supplement or additional questions that a school is going to write. Know that we're going to notice if the quality is super different on them. Because I feel like a lot of students spend a lot of time, and they have 85 people read the personal statement. I wouldn't recommend that, that's too many people, but they spend so much time, maybe even in an English class, on the personal statement. And then they get to the institution-specific questions, and they're sort of like, oh, yeah, I gotta do those, and they sort of kind of whip them out, and they're not refining them as much as the others. And we don't ask for things we don't want, right? Like there's a certain amount of trust we hope that you'll give us in this process, and it's like, if we say the SAT or the ACT, we mean it. If we ask for an essay, there's a reason we're asking for that. We want that answer. And so being able to kind of sit with those questions, it doesn't have to be the same amount of time. It's only coming to one institution, but those are not meaningless. Those actually are incredibly impactful, because we wouldn't ask it. We don't want extra things. We don't need extra things. And so if we're asking for it, there's a good reason. And so trying to make sure you're giving those questions the amount of time that they really need for you to be able to answer them for those institutions.
May see some increased essays regarding dares and fruit at some of your colleges, so we will see. But great advice. Certainly, college writing something others would want to read, following the college guidelines, I think is all very, very good. I know we're coming up on the hour, so before we get to our final question, just have one other one from the audience, and so we've got the essay. Another question we get a lot: interviews. So I know folks you're probably doing some virtual interviews, or you will do interviews. We know that students, sometimes we all get nervous before an interview and speaking. So, we like to share with students and families that, folks on the college side they know that you might be a little nervous, but that's okay. So, when it comes to interviews, any pieces of advice for students when it comes to preparing, or, questions to ask, things of that nature?
Yeah, I guess.
Go ahead, Andrew.
No, go ahead, Ryan.
This is going to be quick. At the state universities, the interviews are not required. Interviews are always welcome at any one of the state universities or UMass campuses. A student can ask for and engage in an interview or a meeting with a representative from their state university admission office, and that information is used. That information is, now you are known to that admission counselor, and that helps them in the process of considering your application. But at all of the state universities, in 98% of the programs, interviews are not required.
Yeah, I would say to Ryan's point, there's two types of interviews. There's evaluative, where people take notes, and we will consider that in the application process. And then there's informative, where we're not going to take notes. It's not about vetting you. It's really about engaging and giving information, or exchanging information back and forth, and having a conversation. A lot of our offices, this will happen either with our staff or with student staff in our office. And so, for WPI, I really encourage students to consider it, because a lot of ours will be done by students. And so it's a great opportunity just to engage with a student, to ask them those questions that you might not be comfortable asking an admissions professional, or you may not care what our answer is. You may actually want a student's perspective, go figure. But I think that, it's a great opportunity, but I'd say, to Ryan's point, very, very, very few schools require them, and if they require them, it's typically for a good reason, and so you should definitely do that. But if it's not required and you're someone who gets super anxious about that, and
Yes.
don't put yourself through it. It's okay. It's okay to take a pass. There are other ways to, if it's a school that does demonstrate an interest, there are other ways to show your interest. This process can be difficult, can be challenging. And I think what you're hearing from all of us is it should also be a positive experience, right? So don't put yourself in situations where you are so uncomfortable, because you should be finding a school that's comfortable with who you are and shouldn't make you jump through hoops that you're not comfortable.
Yeah, to that end, I would add, like, no one's going to ask you trick questions at interviews. So, like, if you're comfortable doing an interview and you want to show up and chat with a student and tell them about yourself and give them the answers to some questions, like, you don't have to prepare a bunch of answers at home and then give those answers to the question that doesn't really go with them because these are the things you feel like you're supposed to say. We're really not trying to trick you at any point in the process. We're trying to create opportunities for us to get to know you, or your admission counselor to get to know you, and for you to be able to show us sort of the best of who you are academically and like what's important to you as a person.
That's great. And, I think a common theme that we've heard, throughout tonight is don't get overwhelmed, talk to folks. There are options and opportunities. And so I think that it's good to hear, and it's good for, folks who are on the line, perhaps going through this for the first time. And again, it's really good to hear it from the school side as well. I do want to be cognizant of time. We're at 7:02. Final question. I know that we have talked a lot about this. You've shared some great words of advice, wisdom, things to keep on your mind, what to not worry about, which I think is very important. But before we do go, any parting words of advice for students and families, as they begin or continue their college search process? So 30 seconds or a minute, or however long.
Sure. I believe deeply in the benefits of education, and to that end, I absolutely believe it's all going to be okay. It feels stressful, it feels confusing, and it feels probably even harder to figure out how you're going to navigate it, given that we're in the world we're in the middle of right now. Please know that colleges and those of us who choose the admission and financial aid professions want to help you. We are called counselors, right, for a reason. They want to answer your questions. They want to be helpful. So get your questions answered. Like, if you don't know what the answer is, find the person who's responsible for, it's usually done by territory, right? So who's in charge of Massachusetts or the area of Massachusetts where you live, and reach out to that person. They want to talk to you. They want to give you information. And it's often rare that we get to interact with the students right at the grassroots level. So that's what I would say. It's all going to be okay.
I think in this year, even more than any other year, this process is not about a prize to be won. The college search and admission process is actually a process of getting to know who you are and what you want, having adult conversations with your parents and guardians about, what do you want from your life, about finances, and how you're going to afford education. And so it's an incredible opportunity for students and parents to relate to each other in ways that they maybe haven't, and for you to think about, why do you want, I love sort of Jen starting with I believe in the power of transformative education, so why do you want to go, right? Think about those reasons and have that help inform your process. And so I think a good sort of college search and sort of admission process is one that is reflective and that you kind of lean into as that, as cheesy as it sounds, the journey that it can be for you, but really sort of thinking about, what's that this process is about you, and it's about learning. It's not about a prize to be won. So you shouldn't start this out with a super fixed goal at the end other than education and getting to know yourself and that goal of education at the end of it. But yeah, there's a lot of wonderful things that can happen along the way. And maybe you won't have to do the long, crazy road trips with your parents because you might not be able to visit as many colleges. And so that's a nice thing to look forward to not having to do. Yay!
I wish we knew the audience that we were talking to right now, whether it was students or parents. That either way, that was a super funny and true comment, Emily. I love it. And
Emily.
It was a mic drop moment right there.
That's right.
Yep, and I think she's back. There she is.
The great advice from Emily and Jennifer, and I'm going to be a little more specific, not more specific, specific on some resources. Reach out to the free, very available, extremely helpful resources that are all around you. We in Massachusetts, we like to call ourselves the education state. There is a lot of education. There are a lot of higher education institutions. And there are a lot of not-for-profit organizations in our state that are designed to help students with this college search and college financing process. So very similar to the advice that Jennifer gave about reaching out to colleges. Counselors exist on all of these college campuses for exactly the purpose of helping you. So do reach out to the colleges. But also there's organizations like MEFA, like the Massachusetts Educational Council, Mass EdCo in Worcester, educational opportunity centers all over our state that are available to help you with college applications, to help you with financial aid applications, and so much more. And you've got resources that are available through MEFA, like programs like this, as well as if we ever get to be around each other again, the in-person events that can happen in within your town or within the region where you live. These are designed to help you, and they are available to you for free, and they're available from experts in the field that either are related to the college that they work at, or perhaps in the case of educational opportunity centers, aren't affiliated with any college or university at all, and are available to offer you a good advice on this process. You've got resources, you've got folks that care about you. Reach out and let us help.
Yeah, and I guess I'll round things out by saying, write about produce-related dares. No, that is not my advice. No, I mean, I think I've had a lot of conversations, specifically with rising juniors and parents of rising juniors, and I think you know, the anxiety that many of you may be feeling is palpable in those conversations, even through email. And we get it, right? I mean, there's been so much
sweaty emails out there.
Yeah.
There's been so much you know, written about you know, the class of the class of 2020 who's just graduated and is going through their college process, and how disrupted it was. And that was 2 months, right? You guys are starting from this place, and it could be much more than 2 months, and it's hitting at a time when you typically would be learning about so many of those colleges and narrowing down, like Ryan said. And so I think a piece of advice I have is take a step back and just really reflect on what you can't control and try to put that aside. And then you free yourself up to really focus on what you can control. And what you can control is this process. You know, it took for me to be on this side of the desk working in admissions to realize a really simple thing. You all are probably smarter than me and just get this, but you know, there are 3 decisions in the college search process. And so much of this, so much of the conversation around this centers on the one decision colleges make, and that's who to admit. You hold the power. You decide what colleges you're even considering. You make that decision. And then at the end of the day, you decide of all the great fit schools that you've considered, that have accepted you, you get to decide where you go. So you have the control in this process. It doesn't always feel like it, but if you keep that in mind and you keep an open mind, you know, I completely agree with what Jen said earlier, is that, you know, there isn't necessarily a perfect college because there are so many great universities out there that you really can't go wrong if you do this search process right. And hopefully you can do that with as little anxiety as possible.
Excellent parting words. from each of you. Thank you all again for taking your time to share your thoughts, to ease some fears of our students and families, and also to provide some really great resources and things to consider as they start or continue their college search process. So I just want to end with, because I have to, just to say connect with us on social. We have a lot of really great resources with MIFA, as Ryan mentioned, ways that will talk to you about college financing, talk to you about things that we touched on tonight. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. We have the opportunity for one-on-one appointments if you want to talk about college financing options. So please do connect with us. If you liked this webinar tonight, we encourage you to go to our site and check out any recorded webinars that we have. Certainly register for any other family webinars that we have coming up. If you feel inclined to leave a Google review, we would love that as well. Hopefully you had a great experience. It will be attributed to the panel members, but it would be positively reflected on MIFA, so it would be great. But we do encourage you to reach out to us if you have any questions. We take one-on-one appointments, call us, email us, and of course everything is free. So Emily, Ryan, Jen, Andrew, thank you all again so much for your time tonight, and thanks everyone for listening, and have a great rest of your evening. Take care.
Thanks
Thank
for
you all.
having us.
Bye, everyone.
It's gonna be great.